Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people out there who cover games these days seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,619 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. And for today's video, I wanted to talk about some not great moments in my gaming life. I've labeled this as games I've bothered other people to play, but let me clarify that a little bit. So for instance, a game I've bothered people to play would be Toe Jam and Earl. Because I love playing this game, I wanted to play it, I wanted to beat it with a second person. It's far better in co-op. That's not what this video is about. This video is about games that I wanted to play that I didn't own or I didn't have means of playing. So let's see what I mean by that right now. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so a lot of these are going to be games I couldn't play because I didn't have the devices that needed to play them, or the systems needed to play them. So let's get started off with one of the early ones, which was around the mid-2000s. The Nintendo Wii was crushing the world, and a sequel to a very unexpected hit was coming out for the Wii only, and I did not own a Wii, and I really didn't want to buy one or buy this game, but I had a roommate in college who had a Wii, and I more or less convinced him to buy it, and then proceeded to play the damn thing. I don't even think he liked the game. And that is Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. So I played through this, I beat it, I used my memory card from the GameCube one to import the data from it, though I don't really know how much that actually affects the game. And as far as Fire Emblems go, Radiant Dawn is not my favorite. Now, this was the second Fire Emblem I ever played, so at the time I was not aware that it was such an anthology series, because the second one more or less has you playing in the same world with a lot of the same characters. It's a time skip, and I loved Ike so much from the first one that my main gripe with the game was the fact that you take so long before you finally get to play as the Grail Mercenaries again. Now that I've played more and I understand more of what the Fire Emblem series is about, I'd be very interested in going back and trying Radiant Dawn again and seeing if my thoughts on it have changed. Because, you know, I know what to expect this time. But yeah, my roommate bought this game, and what was funny is when we ended up moving out at the end of the semester, I kept it. And I didn't intentionally keep it, I had it for some reason, which I don't know why, because I didn't have any Wii games, or I think I had a few Wii games, but I didn't have this Wii, so I don't know why I still had it. And he still had my copy of Family Guy Season 5, I want to say. So my senior year in college, after like a few months, I finally managed to track him down because I wanted it back, and the way we managed to do some horse trading is I traded him his copy of Radiant Dawn back for Family Guy Season 5. And yeah, I definitely took the brunt end of that deal. It would have been far better to keep Radiant Dawn, because I then later had to pick it up complete. And I think I picked it up for $60, $70. It's more expensive now. Definitely, I'm glad I picked it up, but still, that was a bummer. So yes, that sets the table for what we're kind of expecting here. Now, a lot of these games we're going to be talking about, I still don't own, or digital only. So one of those would be Angry Birds. You know, the Rovio sensation that took over the nation. It was, I believe, iPhone exclusive when it first came out, or if it wasn't, it was exclusive to certain smartphones, which I didn't have, and I believe my older brother did, and other friends and other people too. So if I found out someone had Angry Birds on their phone, I would incessantly be like, hey, can I play it? Can I play Angry Birds? Can I try it out? And that's what I would do. I mean, I remember many, many nights at my older brother's house just on his phone playing Angry Birds, going through all the different levels and just beating the hell out of it, and him getting irritated sometimes, or at least other people getting irritated because I would beat levels they hadn't gotten to yet. And it's funny, I've never picked up any version of it. I haven't downloaded it on my phone. I have an iPhone now. When I had smartphones, never picked it up. I always enjoyed it, but it was just one of those things where it's funny, looking back on it now, I can't imagine, imagine now in 2023, someone wanting your phone to play a game on it. It just doesn't happen. But back in 2008, 2009, 2010, it wasn't, the phones weren't as functional. We weren't as much of our life on the damn things as they are now. So giving someone your phone for half an hour just randomly at a rehearsal or things of that nature wasn't as foreign. Now, speaking of rehearsals, back in 2010, I never played any of the DS. I really was unaware of the entire DS life cycle. I couldn't believe it when I found out they replaced essentially the Game Boy Advance in 2004. At least that's when the DS came out. And when the Game Boy had a run from 89 to 2000 or 2001, whenever the Game Boy Advance came out, and they released a new handheld that quickly. And one of my castmates, a gentleman named Zach, when we were doing the Who's Tommy, had a DS and he was playing a game called Scribblenauts. Now this is the collection, so this is 1 and 2, I guess. And it was a game where literally you write in or type in different things to solve puzzles on the game, and you could put in Cthulhu, you could put in a vampire, you could put in a gun, and then the actions would play out. And it was such a novel concept and something I had never seen before, and it just hit something so viscerally in me that I had to play it. So literally every day I'd be like, Zach, can I play your DS? Zach, can I play? I want to play Scribblenauts. And, gracefully, the man allowed me to do it. And this would be our pre-show ritual. So he would be getting ready, and I'd be busy playing Scribblenauts on his damn DS. And even when I got a 3DS several years later, I picked it up. But that same urge and desire to play it really flamed out fast. And I think that more or less happened with the actual series. Because then it started going into stuff like superheroes, and I just fell off. And I don't really know what happened to it. I think there hasn't been a new Scribblenauts game in years. But for that brief period of time, I was obsessed with Scribblenauts. Now, here's one that's kind of cheating. So this isn't one I necessarily bothered friends to play. I think my friend, so my buddy Sean, I talk about him all the time, he wanted me desperately to get off the World of Warcraft the disease. So he's like, you gotta play Final Fantasy 12. You're gonna love Final Fantasy 12. Now, I was interested in playing it because for once it looked like it had some more adult looking characters, though the main character still looks like a chick. And so I borrowed his copy of it, and I did get fairly decently far into it. I want to say 20 plus hours. I remember being in sort of an ice canyon, and it never hooked me from the beginning, and I kept pressing forward. I wanted to get to the hunts. I wanted to kill that dinosaur thing at the beginning of the game, but it just fell off. It didn't have enough Final Fantasy DNA, things like the Shiva and Odin being named after ships instead of having summons. The active time battle system wasn't as intriguing. It felt more like an MMO, and what always comes back to me is when I'm playing something that feels like an MMO that's not WoW, I just think, why am I not playing WoW? And that kind of happened with this, and I put it down. I think I talked about it before in games I gave up. But yes, this was his copy. This isn't his copy, but I had his copy of Final Fantasy 12 for quite some time, and I finally gave it back to him because I always try to give games back to people when I borrow them, even if it takes years. I never forget. But there is one time where I didn't give it back, and I don't even know if it was nefarious or not, but it happened to be a game I really wanted to play, and I bothered them to play, and that was Resident Evil 5. I know, right? Resident Evil 5. So this was again during Tommy, the same play. Back then, I was a school crossing guard, so I wasn't making a lot of money, and I didn't have all the money in the world to go and buy games. So I really relied on the generosity of others to either borrow them or, go just play them at rehearsal. And this was the husband of a cast member's copy that had just finished beating it with his brother. So they played through it co-op, and I remember seeing them playing the end of the game, and even the famous part where Chris is hitting a boulder. And I didn't think twice about it because I just wanted to play it. Because this was after this was after Resident Evil 4 came out, and they really revamped the whole series, and I was interested in seeing what it was doing now, especially with a 2-player option that was, I guess, the deliverance of what Zero said it was doing, but I hadn't played Zero at the time. So I borrowed it, I beat it, and it's funny, I even cleaned up the copy because it used to have a sticker on the spine, and I got that off. And somehow I just never returned it. I think what happened was I borrowed it at the cast party, which was at their house. And then, because they lived in San Francisco, I didn't, unless I was doing a show, I didn't really have much reason to go there, and I kept bringing it to different events when I was up there. I just never saw them, and eventually I kind of forgot about it, and I even mentioned it to her once randomly. I said, "Hey, I still have your copy." I think it was at an audition. Like, I still have your copy of Resident Evil 5, and she was like, "What?" Because I didn't care. I mean, this was some rich San Francisco upper class couple, so I mean, they could probably buy all the Resident Evil 5s, but I was never able to give it back, and I still have it. And there you go. That's my copy of Resident Evil 5. All right, now another one going back to early college years was one that I wasn't a huge fan of the first one because I was a GoldenEye fanboy, but when Halo 2 came out, I had to start changing my tune. Now, I didn't own an Xbox. I never had an Xbox, an original one. I bought one at a thrift store maybe 5-6 years ago that kind of works, but doesn't really. But I was obsessed with Halo 2, mainly because of the sword. You know, generally with games, if there's a gameplay loop that really hooks me in, that is super satisfying, that will get me invested in your game. And for me, it was the sound of the sword, the usage of the sword, the prestige of using the sword, and everything about it was incredible. Even in the main story was fun too. The co-op was fun too. Now, what's funny about this game is I could have sworn this came out when I was in high school, because I remember playing it at a lot of my high school friends' houses. But this came out when I was a freshman in college, and I honestly don't remember playing it much in college. I remember playing Halo 3 when it came out a few years later. I don't know if this is Mandela effect stuff or what, but I guess I must have played it on winter break or during the summer, or because I didn't get invested in WoW until 2005. So that whole year before, I was still heavily into console gaming. So that must have been when I played this, but I was obsessed with playing Halo 2. The online multiplayer was my real first foray into online multiplayer, because back then they would allow you to join up with 4 people and all play at it with your tiny screens and your stupid lag. But man, the sword, doing the super jumps where you could break the map and bounce super high up into the screen, always so satisfying. All right, another one here that I was obsessed with playing was, once again, introduced to me by my buddy Sean. So he had an HTC Vive very early on, super powerful computer, and one of the games he showed me was Beat Saber. So I've talked about Beat Saber before, we'll just talk about it briefly here. I was so invested in this game. It literally was a game that not only was fun, you're holding 2 lightsabers, but it actually was a decent workout. And I didn't pick up an Oculus Quest 2 until several years later. And so I played Beat Saber with him, and anytime I would go over for at least the next 6 months, I'd be like, "Hey, let's play that Beat Saber though." And he was very generous with it, letting me play it. And I got hooked. You know, I never got as good as I've gotten now, but I was getting to the point where I was starting to dabble in some of the expert levels, and my wife played it, and it was the first time she played it there, and it was just a really fun experience, and one of those things where, you know, I had to pick it up. I had to play it. All right, another one that I really bothered my neighbor to play was a game called Risk of Rain. So this was my neighbor back in 2013, a gentleman named Ryan, and so he was heavily invested in Steam and knew everything about ROMs and all this, and really kind of got me educated on a lot of the ROM scene and Japanese translated games, and you know, kind of got my toes back into looking backwards at some of the older games. But he was good at introducing me to some Steam games, and one of those was Risk of Rain. And I really enjoyed playing it. And so it had a co-op mode, and I would go over there all the time and we would play it together. I do not like Steam. I just don't like playing on my PC, but I had so much fun playing Risk of Rain, I actually went and downloaded Steam again and bought it. And so this one I did buy. This was one that I didn't continue bothering him about, but in line with this, there was a second game we used to play called Rex Rocket, which this was before Metroidvanias were everywhere and all these 2D side-scrolling platformer type things with roguelike elements was around. I think Rogue Legacy was another game that he introduced me to. But Rex Rocket didn't get a console port, and it still hasn't to this day, and it's a really solid game. I really enjoyed playing it. Essentially, you're on a spaceship going through different hallways, very Metroid-like, definitely in that Metroidvania realm. Maybe forgettable by today's standards. At the time, there wasn't a huge amount of these type of games, but I really enjoyed playing it. I have not picked it up. I've looked for physical editions of it ever coming out, and they never have. Indie Box didn't do it. Limited runs. It's never got a console port as far as I know. So it's just another one of those ones, kind of like the game like Lisa. Like I've heard of Lisa, the kind of weird Earthbound-like game. Never got a console release either. So Rex Rocket, that's one that I used to always want to play over at his house. Alright, so this one's cheating a little bit. I actually was bothered by a friend to play it, but I just wanted to throw it in here just because it is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So I had just gotten a PS1. I played through Resident Evil 1, 2, I think Metal Gear Solid even, Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy 7. And then my buddy David's like, you gotta play Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, I had just finished playing through Castlevania 64, and I was not disappointed all that much, but I was not that impressed. And I'm like, I don't know. And especially because that's a 2D game. I mean, we're in the 3D era now, bro. I'm not going to play this. He's like, trust me, you're going to want to check this out. And I'm so glad I listened to him. You know, it was always one of those budding friendships where you didn't want to listen to the other guy. He was the one who said Chrono Trigger is the greatest game ever. I said Link to the Past is the greatest game ever. And I'm the idiot who didn't pick up Chrono Trigger when I should have. Should have listened to him. He was right. He's right about that. Xenogears, freaking Secret of Mana. Oh well. So, I played through Symphony of the Night, loved it, great game, and then I thought I beat it. And he's like, are you sure? Did you do the upside down? I'm like, what the hell's the upside down? And then, wow, there's an entire second half of the game that you can completely miss. So that was one that I was very happy he did bother me about playing, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. But one that once again, back to kind of the Halo thing, I didn't have an Xbox 360, and a new series came out that had a cover-based shooting system, so it reminded me of a game called Winback, which I talked about last week, but it was a lot more polished, it was a lot cooler, had a very visceral, super tough guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger feel to it, and that was Gears of War. And the thing that really sold me on this game was the fact that you could have a chainsaw on your gun, and so it wasn't even, like, once again, I talked about with the sword in Halo 2. If you find a feedback loop that is simple, it will keep me coming back. That will hook me in. And going and chainsawing fools was that hook. So just like the sword was so awesome, going through and chainsawing somebody, especially if you're playing online multiplayer, was amazing. But even going through the campaign with it was amazing. So I loved me some Gears of War. Would always want to go. I don't remember. This had to be my buddy David again, because he had an Xbox 360, and so I would come and play at his house, or in college, I would play with people who had Xboxes before Halo 3 came out, and it just a phenomenal time. Alright, so the last ones we have to talk about, I do not have, because once again, like I said, a lot of things I didn't have the ability to play it. So one of those games was a game called Peggle, and this goes back, I believe, to my buddy Zach, the same gentleman who had the DS. So this one was actually a few years later, if I remember. We were doing a show called Strike Up the Band, and I think this was on his phone. And I used to play Peggle. Or maybe he was doing the same thing. I don't know. He was a really nice guy. And so he would let me play Peggle on his phone. And this was before I really was all that familiar with a lot of mobile games. PopCap, I believe, made it, and they're the same people as the Plants vs. Zombies. And other than that, I think Farmville and Restaurantville and all those things, like all those big Facebook browser games were huge at the time. But I used to play a lot of Peggle and really enjoyed it, would bother the hell out of him to play it, and once again, graciously, I don't know what it is. I guess I was just shameless enough to be like, let me play, I need to play, and it worked. But here's a funny one. So, I had, as we all did growing up, we had the TI 89 calculators. There was the ability to play games on these, so I used to play a game called Fall Up all the time, and I didn't have it for a while, so before I was able to get it for myself, I was bothering people to play it and get it on the calculator. And then I think it's on this still, but I haven't used this in years. But in freshman year in high school, I had a gentleman in my study hall. I believe his name was Diego. And this was a very strange kid. He wore a trench coat. So this was fall of 2000. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know. So he was a very strange kid. And when those events in Colorado happened, a lot of people were looking at this guy as well. But he had a Palm Pilot. So a Palm Pilot that was playing a game that I didn't know was a PC game called Scorched Earth. And Scorched Earth is essentially a tank game where you're on a field and you fire shots and then try and hit other enemies and you get other weapons and things of that nature. It's a lot like the game Worms, but I mean, this is a very rudimentary way of playing it on a Palm Pilot. And so, because with this you had a stylus. So in the other ones, I think you just, I don't know, maybe use the mouse, but you would actually draw out the trajectory or draw the, like, I don't know, we're going way back here. I don't remember exactly. And I would beg the kid and be like, can I please play Scorched Earth? Can I please do this? And everyone's like, this was study hall I had for gym. So luckily the PE teacher did not give a damn what we were doing. We had it in the cafeteria. And so I think we maybe got in trouble a couple of times. You're like, all right, put that away. But still, I would just play incessantly Scorched Earth. And I never, like, I always wanted to pick it up. It was not available. This was before you really could find a lot on the internet. And I think it even goes under different names. And when I found Worms, then I picked up Worms, and I just wasn't as satisfied with it. But I recently came across the ability to play it on PC, so I want to download it and check it out again, because that game was so much fun. And then another one that I bothered the hell out of, you'll be interested to know, was vanilla World of Warcraft. So in 2005, I was in a fraternity. And there was a gentleman in the fraternity, his name was CK, and we were at this point where we had started it the year prior, but then a lot of people who started it graduated, so we were founding fathers of this particular chapter of Kappa Sigma. And so we were worried about members leaving, because you needed a certain amount of members to stay in order to keep your charter. So I started hanging out with this guy, CK, and because he had hookah, so at the time I was really interested in hookahing. So we would go and hookah together, and he was playing a computer game called World of Warcraft. Now I had already known of this game because my buddy David, once again, he was obsessed with it. And so I remember that summer before, he was constantly trying to get me to play WoW. He's like, bro, you gotta play WoW. Bro, you gotta check it out. Check it out. He just didn't do it. Once again, we always, like, I didn't want to be convinced by him by everything, because you know, it's always like, oh, if you like it, I don't want you to tell me what to like. And I remember one time we watched the entirety of the Lord of the Rings Return of the King Extended Edition while he was playing WoW, while he was botting. And I remember telling him, like, okay, great, you have a bot, we can go do something now. He's like, no, I gotta sit here and watch the bot. I'm like, okay, so you really just bought a bot so you could sit there and watch the bot while it does the work for you? I didn't get it. Lo and behold, not too long after that, I did get it. And I was obsessed with it. So my buddy CK had a roommate named Al, I want to say, who also was playing, but was nowhere near as serious. My buddy CK was on the Grand Marshal trajectory. He never made Grand Marshal because he didn't have that much, he couldn't waste that much of his life. I think he made Field Marshal, which is rank 13 if you're familiar with the honor grind from original WoW. And his buddy Al was just screwing around. Like, he was the typical new player who'd get to level 20, delete his character, make a new character. And so at first CK allowed me to play on his account, and I think I got up to level 10 as a druid, had a great time, was obsessed, but I didn't have a PC. And so I was like, well, I gotta buy one, I gotta build one. But I didn't have the money yet, and I wasn't quite there yet. So his buddy Al, who was also in the same room, he had WoW as well. And so I would play on Al's account. And even after I bought my own account and bought a PC, I would still go over to CK's house and play it at his house before my thing was complete. So I owned a WoW account, but I didn't own a damn computer. And I was playing it at this other guy's account. So I guess that technically is not begging him to play. I was playing my own account, but I was using his computer and his hardware. But man, he used to get so pissed at me doing that. And eventually I think he did something with the computer where I couldn't do that anymore and I had to just give it up. But yeah, that is how I started playing World of Warcraft. And another game that actually isn't a game. It's a board game. It's a board game called Gloomhaven. And this is a game that my buddy Sean once again introduced me to. It is a very intricate board game. It's gotten hundreds of different scenarios, and what's interesting about it is you'll pull a card, and then after the card has been read, you rip it up and get rid of it. So it's one of these legacy type games where every playthrough is different. You have different classes you unlock by it's incredibly complicated for a board game, tabletop game, but it's essentially designed like a video game. Well, lo and behold, there is an actual game of it now that is on PC, and then later this year it's coming to Switch. And I just wanted to briefly mention it here. It is well worth playing, though it is incredibly complicated. Since I've played the board game extensively, and played the video game, the PC version, I actually discovered that we were doing a few things wrong, which made the game so much easier. But I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out here. And I think that's all of them. Let me double check. I think that covers all. Oh, one last one. So one last game I really bothered one of my friends to play, which I mentioned in the last video, we shouldn't give up on it, is Guitar Hero. So Guitar Hero 1, which I still don't own. I don't own a copy of Guitar Hero 1. So my buddy Lucas, once again, we're back in the fraternity. This is when we were in a fraternity house. So one of my suite mates, we all shared a bathroom. He was living with my other good buddy Jesse. And he introduced me to this game called Guitar Hero. And ironically, about 3 months before, I had bought a guitar over the summer, and I really wanted to learn guitar. I don't know, I played trumpet before that. I've always been musically inclined and enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what, I like Jack Johnson. I want to learn how to play some acoustic guitar and do that. Well, unfortunately for my guitar playing, I was introduced to Guitar Hero. And it got to the point where I was so obsessed with playing his copy, I just took the game and the controller and put it in my room and just started going ham on it. And I mentioned how I really got up to expert mode. I was playing the ZZ Top song, Sharp Dressed Man. That was the one that got me over the hump. And what happens, it's almost like in a video game when you kind of know what you're doing until you get to a really hard boss fight. And by beating that hard boss fight, you then get 10 times better at the rest of the game. And that's kind of what happened with Guitar Heroes. I finally beat an expert game, and it gave me so much tool set and ability to lean on and the recognition of the star power that I was unable to translate that into the rest of the game. And I think Guitar Hero 1 is still the only game I've been able to beat every song. The hardest one, I believe, was Bark at the Moon, which is insane, and was just something I really enjoyed doing. But eventually, my buddy Lucas was like, "Hey, can I get my stuff back?" And he did. He did get it back. Though I think in the end, he gave me one of his guitars. I don't know, because I have 2 guitars. I'm still not sure how that happened. Maybe I picked up a second one on eBay or something. But anyways, that is it. I could talk about things like Counter-Strike probably, but I don't really remember. And there are a few games back in the day, like there's a Mage browser game. I couldn't remember what that was, but for the most part, those are games that I bothered people to play, shamelessly so. Let me know about some games you guys kind of hoodwinked others into letting you play, or if you're familiar with this kind of thing. I don't know if it's all that common, but I just wanted to kind of air some dirty laundry and thank all the generous people who allowed me to essentially play their stuff or use their, especially the phones. Man, that one was rough. But anyways, yes, that's what you get for this week. As always, thank you so much to all the new subscribers, all the new watchers. I am just blown away by the level of support the channel has gotten these recent months, and it just means the world to me. I love talking games. I love talking to all you guys. I love seeing all the new comments, all the people discovering. I love seeing all the old videos getting watched. Like, it's so cool to me seeing something I made back in 2015 get a random view. It just, if you're in one of those old videos, throw a comment in it, just say hey, or just say whatever. It's just nice. Like, I'll respond. You can see I'm very good at responding, probably to my own detriment. But yes, as a reminder, I release a video every Tuesday. I have a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel more. I'll try to think of something that makes the Patreon a little bit more worthwhile, because I really will admit I've been slacking on that. But everything that goes into that does go into the channel. And currently, right now, I am trying to save to buy a new PC so I can hopefully start streaming again and get some better editing down. And because I've been doing it in a laptop since my computer got executed by the cat who is now currently clawing at my entertainment center. Anyways, I've rambled on enough here. It's been so nice getting a hold of you guys. Take care.